It really doesn't help either that it is based on the Playmobil toy line, and the characters rarely even acknowledge that they are toys, resulting in the whole movie to just be about a girl jumping from one generic world to the next, sprinkled with unfunny gags and easily forgettable songs. When you end up with a toy this hopeless, you better just return it to the store and get your money back. That was from the last time I fully discussed about Playmobil the movie in a video. As you could tell, I am not a fan of the film. I remember back at the end of 2019, I gave this feature a merciless review by calling it a worthless Lego movie ripoff with no redeeming qualities. Yet, surprisingly, it wasn't the worst animated film I've seen that year. Let's just say that cold brew hit when Arctic Dogs was released a month prior. But that still didn't change how I found Playmobil to be awful. In fact, right after making the review, the movie was a last-minute addition to my list of the worst animated films of the 2010 decade, as you just saw. And you know what's even worse for the feature? I know that I am not alone in that sentiment. There are many other reviews that heavily criticize the picture by comparing it to the Lego movie, thus solidifying its depressing reputation as a failed knockoff. But is there actually more to this movie than what people say? If we look into the history of how this film got made, maybe it could answer some questions on how it came to be, or if it ever wanted to be more than just a copy of its Lego counterpart. It's easy to look at something and shout on the internet, "What were they thinking?" But let's actually take the time to answer that. And once we know what happened, then we will get into the big question, is Playmobil the movie more than a Lego movie ripoff? Well, let's find out.
There's so much world out there.
Now, before we look into the movie, we gotta first talk about the toys it was based on.
This is a toy. It's a stupid toy, and none of this means anything.
Playmobil is the creation of German cabinet maker Hans Beck. In 1971, he was asked by Horst Brandstatter, the owner of the company Giobra Brandstatter, to create toy figures instead of model airplanes that Beck originally proposed. Hans' idea was an updated and more versatile version of the old tin soldiers that are crafted especially with kids in mind. They're almost 3 inches tall so that they can fit in a child's hand and could move parts of their bodies, unlike those stiff soldiers. At first, Horst wasn't sure about these figures, despite letting Hans making them. But what really got the toys going was the 1973 oil crisis, which resulted in plastic to be a lot more expensive to manufacture. So instead of making products that would need a good amount of plastic to make, like a hula hoop, the company decided to invest in making more of Beck's small figures so that they can make large quantities without spending too much. The toys, which were given the name Playmobil, made their official debut at the 1974 International Toy Fair in Nuremberg, Germany, with 3 themes for the playsets, including Native Americans, construction workers, and knights. There were some uncertainties about them at first, but when a Dutch firm decided to take a chance and put them on the market, it didn't take long for Playmobil to become the next global toy sensation. There are several reasons to why they became popular to both kids and collectors, including the attention to detail of the sets and their historical accuracies, but the biggest explanation is how the figure's simplicity leaves a lot of room to use your imagination. I even talked to a toy enthusiast about this, and she gave me a lot of insight about the secret to its success, along with the toy community's perspective of the movie. Well, funny enough, she's actually a Lego girl, but I do trust her Playmobil knowledge.
I think there's simplicity and nostalgia to it, kind of like a lot of people's draw to Lego, where it's a universal system of characters, and I think the characters go a long way with Playmobil, because you got to keep in mind this is not like a construction toy. This is more of a, I guess, a character and roleplay toy. And the actual like characters have a very uniform look in terms of their body and everything that is kind of iconic, I think, especially I think in Europe more so than North America. And that's why a lot of my experience with Playmobil and kind of learning about it was through Eurobricks, which is a European Lego forum, but for fans all around the world. So I think there's that simplicity that you could kind of think of like the simplicity of the Lego minifigure, but just like the Lego minifigure, they have evolved in so many ways and have become more detailed in their design and more complex in the types of ideas that they're trying to capture. But I think it still roots back to a simple toy that is very nostalgic in a way that it can be beloved by anybody.
And since their debut, the world of Playmobil grew significantly larger with thousands of different playsets that were added over time. There were many that reflected upon the real world related to jobs, culture, history, and everyday life, but then included sets that are themed to fantasy, dinosaurs, cars, and popular IPs. As for the figures themselves, there have been over 3 billion individual characters sold over the last 50 years, with the fastest selling Playmobil figure on record is based on the 16th century German theologist Martin Luther. However, with this success, they also have a reputation of being rivals to the older and more successful toy brand Lego. The comparisons between the two are inevitable. They're both toys with a simple design created in Europe whose selling point is to encourage people to use their imagination in order to play with them that feature a wide variety of themes. Yes, there are some notable differences as well, where one is a set of blocks that requires the user to build that is part of the brand's creativity, while the other requires a lot less construction with no room to make anything except for what it is intended to be, but there are more similarities to them than not. Then again, that reputation is mostly from the public. Amongst collectors and fans, however, it's a bit of a different story.
I always saw them more as toys that go together than toys that are rivals, but a lot of the Lego community, a lot of the Playmobil community does consider them rivals. And I guess that would be in the character collecting space for like, you could even include stuff like Kid Robot and other like vinyl figures and stuff and Funko Pop to be rivals with Lego. But they're not rivals in the building space. They're not a construction toy. They are about constructing role play scenarios with these characters and everything, which I can see. But again, that's with any of these figure toys in general. So it's always interesting that it's been kind of seen as a rivalry, because I never saw it that way, but I could see other people saying there's such a rivalry. But I'm like, in reality, the most I've seen direct competition was that Playmobil had their character packs and Lego had their character packs. And those were definitely competing for some of the same shelf space. I do know the CEOs they still see Lego as a rival. And even more so, I didn't know if we would get to this with a later question, but the licenses. From my understanding back in the day, Playmobil did have licenses to the extent of like, I think they did like a McDonald's promo, which I did read was recalled, interestingly enough. And then they did like a car stuff, but they never really did movie licenses until, and this is from my research, and I hope I'm not wrong here, I believe it was Ghostbusters that was the first movie license, and that was 2017. And once they did that, they went into stuff like Scooby-Doo, A-Team, and other licenses. But that was like, I'm almost confident that was their first like media license. And the CEO has since talked about how they were very late to the licensing game, and that's how they lost some ground to Lego. But what I've seen a lot of times is that people who get into Lego Pirates or Lego Castle will get into Playmobil Pirates and Castle themes, or people from Playmobil Castle and Pirates, I've heard, have come over to the Lego side, kind of expanding upon those tropes that were introduced for action at a younger age. And exploring that to a more adult collector perspective.
And just like Legos, Playmobil expanded beyond the toy market so that their figures play around in different mediums. They have their own amusement parks called Fun Parks, several video games, a TV show in 2014 called Super 4 that ran for 2 seasons that had a total of 104 11-minute episodes, and an animated movie in 2009 called Playmobil: The Secret of Pirate Island. On second thought, the word movie should be used loosely in this case. It's actually more like an interactive DVD. However, if Playmobil wanted to have a legitimate feature, then the brand didn't have to wait long until they got their own film set. And I don't mean a themed play set that they sell off the shelves, but in real life to make a real Playmobil movie.
We are brothers in arms.
When do we start?
We already have.
On November 6, 2014, the French media company On announced that they were teaming up with Wild Bunch and Pathé in order to produce an animated film based on Playmobil, and brought on board Bob Persichetti to write and direct the picture. Before this, Bob worked at Disney and DreamWorks as an in-betweener, a storyboard artist, and the head of story for the 2011 Puss in Boots movie. At the time, he was already at On working as a writer on the studio's adaptation of The Little Prince, so they might as well have him and the animation team prepared for their next movie. Also, On was already collaborating with the toy brand by working on the series Super 4, so they might as well take the next step with them by securing the film rights and bring Playmobil to the big screen. On a side note, you may have noticed the date of this moment and that it was released around the end of 2014. That's a funny coincidence because at the start of that year, that was when the Lego Movie was released and became one of the biggest animated features of that time. I cannot confirm if there is a connection between these two events, and On did claim that they started the production in 2012, but you know we're not off to a good start when the timing of the announcement is already making the film look suspicious. However, even with the team they had, they knew that they couldn't do this alone. If they really wanted their movie to be shown to the world, then they would need help from one of the major animation studios, and the one they considered was Sony Pictures Animation. In 2015, Persichetti and On went to Sony to pitch their movie to them. The American studio was intrigued by this idea and wanted to buy the rights off of them. Ultimately, the deal never happened, but Sony did not leave empty-handed. They proposed to Persichetti to come work for them to be the first of what later became 3 directors of an experimental animated feature they were starting to develop, which he agreed at the end of that year, and switched jobs to work on what we know today as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I think it's safe to say that Bob got the better end of the deal on this one.
I've lost him.
But it's okay. Finding a replacement was actually pretty easy. And it only took a few months to find someone else to take the helm on Playmobil. And who better to turn the toys into animation than a Disney veteran?
Well, look what we have here.
Lino DiSalvo was an animator at Walt Disney Animation Studios for almost 17 years. He started his career by working on the visual effects of Disney's live-action films like 102 Dalmatians and Reign of Fire, but then got to work on the company's main animated features when they fully moved to computer animation, starting with Chicken Little. And from there, he gradually climbed the ranks at the studio up to becoming the head of animation of Frozen. He also did some voice acting on a couple of projects that he worked on, like Bolt as Vinny the Pigeon and Prep and Landing as Gristletoe Joe.
You know, I gotta say something, if I could say something here. You look familiar. Joey, look at this guy's mug. Gristletoe Joe, sir, but my friends call me Nancy.
I'm gonna remember you when I'm in charge, Nance.
But then in 2014, DiSalvo left Disney in order to become a creative director at Paramount Animation. The result of that was honestly nothing, so not long after, Lino pitched his idea of a Playmobil movie to On, presenting how he did extensive research on the toys by doing over 200 interviews with fans, looked at how his own kids play with them, and even revisited his own childhood in order to understand the brand's overall appeal. This showed that DiSalvo had a lot of passion for Playmobil, and the producers were convinced that he had what it takes to be the film's new writer and director, which they announced on February 9th, 2016. And just before they lost Bob Persichetti, they set up the plans to turn the brand into not a movie, but a movie franchise. The film that they were developing had the title of Playmobil, Robbers, Thieves, and Rebels, and it was originally the first of a trilogy. In fact, a proof of this is in the final film with the mid-credit scene that hints at a potential follow-up with the villain coming back. course, this all changed over time, but one thing that stayed consistent was how it was given a decent budget of $75 million. But back to DiSalvo, he was excited to have his first major directing job, to which he stated,
"I've learned most of my skills by growing up in the Disney system. I was very fortunate to work on films like Tangled and Frozen. I am thrilled at the prospect of developing the Playmobil film. As a father and a filmmaker, to create a film about your son's favorite toy? What else do you want?"
During the first 15 months of production, after Open Road Film stepped in to be the film's American distributor, the director and a team of about 10 people were working on the movie's animatic, making sure that they have a plot that honors the legacy of Playmobil. The story that they ultimately created is about a girl named Marla who had to become a responsible adult by raising her little brother Charlie after they lost their parents. But after Charlie snuck into a toy museum, they both were transported into a Playmobil universe and became Playmobil figures. And if Marla ever wants to find Charlie again and go back home, she'll have to team up with some unique personalities from different worlds and rescue both the brother and other warriors with their own theming who were kidnapped by Emperor Maximus.
Over the last several months, a number of citizens from different lands have vanished into thin air.
Through Lino's research, he found that roleplay is a key component to the toys. And with the wide variety of themes that the sets featured throughout its history, the team of writers found that they could use that to their advantage by doing something that they call genre jumping. Establishing the story's core where the main character has to go into these different worlds so that they can become the hero of their own story. Gee, I wonder where I've heard that before. The Playmobil company also helped out during that time by sending them every set that ever came out in the Los Angeles area to find inspiration for the film's world building and characters. One example is a food truck themed set and a figure of a guy with a Hawaiian shirt that gave the writers the idea of the movie's comic relief, Del.
I'm Del, and this is, Del's Bell, my truck.
Also, Lino and his longtime friend and fellow writer, Blaze Hemingway, watched several of their favorite movies from the 1980s, such as E.T. and Big, to help find the heart of the feature. They wanted to recapture that same spirit of finding magic in the most ordinary things. Since they established that the plot was about an older sister trying to save her little brother, this helps to add a message about the importance of family, specifically, the bond between siblings as they grow up together, all while the protagonist has to learn what it feels like to be a kid again, role-playing as the hero of each Playmobil world she finds herself in, so that she can bring her brother back to the real world. In fact, DiSalvo stated about his intentions that,
"Today we have so many cynical movies and TV shows out there, but I wanted to make a movie about a family coming together. Hopefully parents and their kids will feel the same way about the movie, and appreciate the truthfulness of Playmobil as we try to explore the wonderful truth that's in these toys."
And speaking of which, they originally thought about approaching this story like a fairy tale by starting off with a narrator opening a book. But to quote one of the films that DiSalvo worked on,
"Oh, no, not the book. How many have seen opening the book before? Close the book. We're not doing that."
Instead, they decided to include some live-action sequences at the beginning and the end of the picture, showing the contrast between reality and the animated world to emphasize that magic that the main character lost in her life and that she'd have to rediscover with the help of the Playmobiles. Gee, I wonder where I've heard that before. Maybe that's just a coincidence because this one is about siblings and the other movie doesn't say that the kid has a sister until the very end of the picture. But once they got the story in place, DiSalvo then moved to Montreal, Canada to work on the visuals at On's animation studio. This time, with a much bigger team than before, consisting of around 300 artists ready to bring the world of Playmobil to life. The goal that they had in mind is having the real sets come alive, as if it displays what we see in our imagination when playing with these toys on the big screen, on top of using the lighting to help differentiate the setting and the tone of each world within the universe. Gee, I wonder where I've heard that. Okay. I think it's time we need to address the elephant in the room here. Yes, the team was always aware of the Lego movie, and how even when they were producing it, people were making comparisons to their project with that film. During a presentation of a work-in-progress version of the feature at the Annecy International Animation Film Festival in 2018, one of the producers, Atan Sumach, addressed the issue by stating,
"The movie Lego relied a lot on comedy and wasn't so much driven by characters, while our film will follow more the Disney tradition of storytelling, and it's meant to appeal to girls as much as boys. Lego grossed almost $500 million worldwide. If we make half of that, we'll be very happy."
I honestly never heard of the complaint that the Lego movie may not be fully appealing to all genders, but I guess there's a first for everything. But unlike that feature where it stays true to the limitation of the toy's movements, DiSalvo allowed 20% more freedom onto the figures themselves so that they could still look like how they do in real life, complete with their plastic texture to sell the illusion that they're still toys, but behave a little more like cartoon characters with the ability to bend their joints and stretch around.
Of course!
Marla?
That's how these magic things work, isn't it?
Marla?
Now, how do we get up there?
What the?
And in late 2018, a few months after the work in progress presentation, not only did they reveal the new title that kept it simple with Playmobil the Movie, but they also announced the all-star cast, including Daniel Radcliffe as the secret agent Rex Dasher.
Surprise, Rex Dasher.
Rex Dasher!
At your service.
Jim Gaffigan as the food truck driver Dell.
Tell the boss Dell's here to see her. I have her money.
Kenan Thompson as the pirate captain Bloodbones.
Me old crew collecting a booty for me booty.
And the starring kids who get teleported into the Playmobil world are Gabriel Bateman as Charlie.
Really? A beast? For me? That's so cool!
And Anya Taylor-Joy as Marla, not long before her career got a massive boost thanks to the Queen's Gambit.
I've got until sundown to save my brother. Can you please use that wand to zap him back to me?
On top of that, since the picture is a musical, with songs written by Anne Previn, Stefan Macchio, and the film's composer, Heitor Pereira, they also have singers among the cast, including Adam Lambert playing as the movie's villain Emperor Maximus.
I, Emperor Maximus of Constantinopolis, declare the games open!
And Meghan Trainor as the fairy godmother, who got the role when she offered the song she was working on at the time, Run Like the River, to be the movie's single.
Now come on, step to my office. It's a place where wishes come true.
And with all the pieces put together, the team was ready to present how they turned Playmobil into a big screen animated feature. However, like the opening of the film, as the team was playing around with the toys, they received an unexpected whiplash when they learned about the movie's tragic fate.
I give the people what they want and what they want's a fight.
And I learned the hard way that life is not an adventure. It's full of disappointments and it's not the way you want it to be.
Playmobil the Movie was always planned to be released in the year 2019. In fact, it was originally supposed to come out early at that time on January 18th. But later on, the movie was being pushed further and further away from the beginning of the year to the end of it, where the first push went to April 19th. But then when Open Road Films filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy back when it was called Global Road on September of 2018, STX Entertainment picked it up several months later and placed it on August 30th. And just when it was a few weeks away from it, they pushed it one more time to its official release date on December 6, 2019. However, some people were able to view the film earlier than the Americans, like in France and the UK, where they got it on August 7th and August 9th respectively. And even before that, the movie returned to Annecy that year in June to have its world premiere. And the reactions were not great. Actually, no point masking it. It was quite bad. Animation fans and animators alike who first saw the film at the festival were mostly slamming it, and there were even a significant amount that walked out during the middle of the screening. But if you thought that was harsh, don't worry about it, because it's only going to get worse from here.
I'm sorry, but there's been an accident.
By the time the film was released in North America in December, critics showed no mercy to this movie with their reviews. They destroyed this feature for just about everything it offers by calling it nothing more than a mediocre at best feature-length toy commercial. The majority of them said that the story was bland, they hate the characters, the world building makes no sense, the animation is inconsistent with its own logic of how they are technically toys, the musical numbers suck, there's little to no imagination to be found, and the tone goes all over the place. At best, only some of the voice acting received some positive reactions, especially for Anya Taylor-Joy, Adam Lambert, and Daniel Radcliffe. But it doesn't help how the film was hopeless when it faced the wrath of the critics, especially when most of them made the unavoidable comparison.
Problem with this movie is that it wants to be the Lego movie so bad. It wants to be that you could see where it was trying to ride. It was just dick riding off the Lego.
Obviously, this musical aspect of the film is completely unnecessary and only exists because Everything Is Awesome was a successful thing. But yet again, that song was self-aware, kind of funny, set the tone for the film. This music has nothing to do with it. It's about as generic as it gets.
So get this, the Lego movie featured Lego Batman, Lego Star Wars, Lego NBA All-Stars, and a Bionicle for like 1 second. And Playmobil has car. Good old car.
I read a review online that said that the Playmobil movie was everything we worried that the Lego movie might be. And that's so freaking true.
Really, this was just one big cash grab trying to hit the magic of the Lego movie without any real talent or understanding of what actually made it so good.
And if that wasn't bad enough, the final blow that it took was from the box office. STX did next to nothing when it came to the film's marketing, and that did not help the terrible outcome of its opening weekend. In fact, as of 2024, Playmobil the movie holds the record for having the third worst opening day and the third worst opening weekend ever for a movie that was in over 2,000 theaters with almost $175,000 and over $656,000 respectively, which puts it behind Delgo and Oogie Loves in The Big Balloon Adventure. This wasn't just a box office bomb. It was near Oogie Loves level of a bomb. A movie would just disintegrate on the spot if it ever stood close to that kind of explosion. And throughout its entire time in theaters, Playmobil only accumulated $1.1 million domestically and earned a worldwide total of just $16.3 million.
This can't possibly get any worse.
There are some obvious reasons as to what led to the movie's demise upon its release. Most people thought that it was terrible, it looks like it's trying too hard to be like the Lego movie, and the marketing was almost non-existent. However, there was another factor that played a big part to its demise, one that connects to several other explanations to how it became a historic flop. I'd argue that one of the biggest culprits to the movie's failure is the release date.
I will confess, I've turned the tide.
Are you kidding me?
Out of any time that this film would have been released, I think Playmobil the movie could not have picked a worse date to come out, even if it tried. Yes, this is only part of the reason why it had such an epic downfall, but most of the other reasons are pretty self-explanatory. The release date, on the other hand, is the one I find to be the most fascinating because of the unique way it damaged the picture. Yes, there was the factor that it came out at a very competitive time for movies. The end of 2019 was noted to have some major hits that took over theaters during the holiday season, including Knives Out, Jumanji: The Next Level, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. But if there was one film that was responsible for completely overshadowing Playmobil, it was Frozen 2, which was released a few weeks prior. Say what you will about the sequel, but at the time, it was unanimous that people would rather give attention to Frozen 2 rather than the other new animated musical. And because of the hype that built up a lot of anticipation for it, the movie went on to repeat its predecessor's success and beyond to become one of the biggest animated features of all time. And now, hold on. Let me get this straight. You once had a release date for it where the only direct competitor it had was the Angry Birds movie 2, which was already out for a few weeks at the time, only to push it back so that its direct competitor became the sequel to one of Disney's most successful animated features. There were allegations that the distributor had limited cash flow, though they later denied it, but how did they not see the threat that ruined all their chances to make a profit for the film? Also, that moment had a bit of cruel irony. Lino DiSalvo used his animation skills at Disney to help bring Arendelle and the Magic Within to life. But when he moved on to make some magic of his own with Playmobil, those same creations returned to freeze any hope he had for it to be a hit. But that's not the part why the bad release date fascinates me. It's actually connected to the Lego Movie. You see, the real interesting part of Playmobil the Movie's failure is not just that it felt like the film was trying to copy the Lego Movie, it was actually that it felt like the film was trying to copy the Lego Movie at a time when the Lego Movie wasn't popular anymore.
Oh, that almost worked. Almost.
2019 was considered to be the year when audiences became tired of movies based on popular toy brands, as their momentum came to a complete stop and caused the film to crash and burn during their time on the big screen. And the one who initiated the trend during the 2010s was also the one that initiated its end. On February 8th of that year, Warner Brothers released the Lego Movie 2, the second part. At the time, people already felt burned out by the presence of the Lego Movie and its impact on film, especially when in 2017, the franchise released several spin-offs in a short amount of time, including the series Unikitty, the Lego Batman movie, and the Lego Ninjago movie. When it came to the latter, it was the first to prove that the Lego Movie doesn't always deliver guaranteed hits, as it came out as a disappointment both critically and financially. And when the second part was released, it wasn't as bad as Ninjago, since critics stated that they mostly enjoyed the sequel, but people were not as amazed by it compared to its predecessor. And as a result, the follow-up ended up becoming a box office flop by earning $106 million domestically and a worldwide total of $199.6 million on a $99 million budget. Not long after, Warner Brothers and Lego agreed to split, as the toy company later teamed up with Universal Pictures in 2020 to allow them to produce the next Lego movies. On a side note, the second part featured more live-action scenes that occur in the real world, more musical numbers, and one of its main themes is about the relationship between a brother and a sister. I can accept that this is most likely a coincidence in this case, but the sequel only made things worse for Playmobil the Movie to make the comparisons virtually unavoidable. But if that wasn't enough, there was another animated musical based on a toy brand that was released in the same year that just so happened to be from the same US distributors as Playmobil, this time being Ugly Dolls. And that too made things worse, where the only things uglier than the dolls were its reviews and box office gross. Some could argue, however, that the one exception amongst all these 2019 toy-based animated films was Toy Story 4. Since that was highly praised by critics, won several awards, including an Oscar, and earned over $1 billion at the box office. That's technically true, but even if some of the characters are based on real toys, I don't think that one actually counts because, unlike the others, this is a sequel from a film franchise that is based on an original concept.
I'm 100% almost sure.
The point that I'm trying to make is that the release date played a critical role to the movie's failure and its terrible reputation. It wasn't just that it got completely eclipsed by the big-name sequels at the time like Frozen 2, but it also came out when people no longer wanted to watch these toy-based films anymore. If the Lego Movie itself failed to bring back audiences for its return, then there was absolutely no chance that a feature that audiences perceive as something that wants to be the Lego Movie could do any better. It's as if all the stars and planets aligned for this movie to make it so that literally everything could go wrong and create one of the biggest disasters in animation history.
I tried to watch it a couple times. And I cannot get through it. I mean, they put it out as a hope to get new fans. And what I was noticing was, correct me if I'm wrong, Playmobil like diehards, but the movie indicated a shift in the eyes of the Playmobil people, that they got more detailed eyes. That was a change that I almost feel maybe might have made it more confusing of what they were trying to do, because I feel like the old Playmobil faces were so iconic. I know a lot of people in the Playmobil community, and maybe I'm wrong in this perspective, but this is from at least the sample size I saw, and it was probably the ones that cross over with Lego. But they felt like it was disrespectful in many ways. And you could watch the Lego movie and you don't feel like it's disrespectful to Lego fans of any age. Like, I love the Lego movie so much. It's just, it's so great to any Lego fan, but a lot of people felt like the Playmobil movie was talking down. I could see that from me trying to watch it. But again, I have not suffered through the full movie, and I'm not a die-hard Playmobil fan. I feel like if Playmobil maybe should have done something a little bit more universal and a little bit more creative to have that brand be sustained and last in popularity. Kind of when you think about like Barbie's having a resurgence in popularity because that movie was so creative and was something that's more universal. The Lego movie had a huge boom in the popularity of Lego. But really, the Playmobil has been trending downward, at least from all my research and from what I've seen from fans kind of leaving. But it is gaining a community, though, based off of its licenses. I think that was almost another misstep. As much as I don't usually like pop culture references or whatever, I think they should have maybe pushed the movie back or something and retool it a bit, like I said, for a more general audience and more childish audience, and then also try to have some fun with those licenses, and that would have helped grow the popularity of Playmobil, because that is the one thing that I've seen that's been trending upward in the Playmobil popularity, and from just me reading like financial, articles and stuff like that, is that people are gravitating towards those licenses.
But even after looking through all of that, I still have to ask this question.
Delightful, huh?
After going through its entire history from the creation of the toys themselves, to its conception, to finding its director, to the making of the film, to its catastrophic release, we have all the materials we need to finally respond to what I asked at the beginning of this. Is Playmobil the movie more than a ripoff of the Lego movie? My answer to that is yes. And no. It's kind of complicated. I honestly don't believe that Lino DiSalvo and the team at On Animation went out of their way to cash in on the Lego movie's success. As strange as it sounds, I think they genuinely wanted to make a movie that pays tribute to the legacy of Playmobil and what makes them a popular brand for so many years. Yes, it does share the same formula as the Lego movie, but that alone doesn't make it a ripoff. It's a good template for brand-based movies to create a fun-filled adventure while also highlighting their appeal and provide a strong message that audiences can bring with them after the experience. In fact, it's still being used today where there have been some fantastic results. A great example is Greta Gerwig's Barbie. It's similar to Lego by being this wacky comedy that rarely takes itself seriously and is set in two different worlds with our own reality and the cartoony Barbie land that has the same logic as how kids play with the dolls. However, it stands out for the Lego movie with its own style of humor and storytelling that honors the history of the toys and the impact they have on the lives of millions across multiple generations, along with providing a powerful commentary about feminism and the struggle that women face when finding their place in a male-dominated world. Playmobil the movie tried to achieve that same goal for its own brand, but the root of the problem is not necessarily the quality of the picture itself, it's actually the toys that the film is based on. Playmobil is already viewed as something that's almost identical to Legos, but more limited with what you could do with it. Because there's already that established comparison, it's virtually impossible to make a movie about Playmobil that uses the same formula without sharing any similarities to the Lego movie. And even if you take Playmobil out of the equation, it really doesn't help that the feature made some creative choices that are suspiciously familiar to what LEGO did. Maybe the filmmakers didn't flat out copy the LEGO movie, but I find it hard to believe that the film did not influence them when making their own picture in any way. It's a LEGO movie ripoff not because it wanted to, but mostly because it had no choice. It's almost impossible to make a Playmobil movie without copying the LEGO movie. But then again, that's probably just my opinion.
I think you can make a great movie out of anything, and you gotta really think outside the box and do something so creative and so unique. Because I know people were initially comparing Barbie to the Lego movie, but then I didn't hear that much after we saw the Barbie movie. And so right out of the gate, you know, a lot of people think toy movie. What's the most popular toy movie? Well, it was the Lego movie. So that's going to be that default comparison. Of course, most popular of all time in terms of non-licensed tie-ins is Toy Story and Toy Story movies. But we think Lego movie when we get into that like tie-in toy movie until I would say Barbie came out. So there's that default there. But seeing that mix of themes and seeing how they have like almost a humor that is a little bit poking fun at the toy itself, I think misled a lot of people into thinking this was going to be like the Lego movie. But yeah, I think to distinguish itself, it had to really think outside the box. And from what I saw, it failed to do that. And from seeing the box office reception, it failed to do that. From seeing the reviews, it failed to do that. And that's not to say that people instantly gravitate towards things that think out of the box financially. So maybe I shouldn't have brought up the box office revenue in that statement, but you get the point.
But regardless of the answer, that doesn't mean that we'll never see another Playmobil movie in the future. After the film, Playmobil created some animated projects for their YouTube channel, ranging from stop-motion shorts to promote their latest sets, to computer-animated series like Novelmore and Adventures of Ayuma. Maybe it won't be happening anytime soon, but it's probably likely that Playmobil will try again to produce another animated feature and reboot their chances of expanding their franchise to film. As long as they still make Playmobil toys for another 50 years, the intrigue to turn them into an animated movie again could potentially be there.
Honestly, I think so. Because if I would see as like if it got a movie the first time, as long as it's not something that's so desecrated, it could get a movie the second time. And I think they will do another Playmobil movie many years down the road. And I hope that movie's great, and it could be great, and we'll see. And I think from the mistakes of the first one, they can learn. They can learn so much from the mistakes. And I think it will be better if we do get a second one. And by second, I don't mean a direct sequel. Please note. But yeah, I think so. And I hope so. And I hope it's great. I know there's potential there. It's a brand, again, that I like. I'm not a diehard fan, but I see how it has connected with people, and I know why it has connected with people, and it makes sense that there could be a lot of potential to make a great movie out of it. And again, it's like a toy, so like the canvas is very blank in terms of what you could do. It's a toy for role play, so it's like you could do so many interesting stories there.
As for this Playmobil movie, it's a cautionary tale of a brand who has always lived in the shadows of their rival. And with the combination of terrible luck and unmindful filmmaking, it only made matters worse to further cement the public's judgment that Playmobil is just an inferior version of LEGO. All while having the reputation of being one of the biggest animated failures in movie history. Will this discourage Playmobil from making another movie ever again? Most likely not. At most, they're temporarily reluctant. But if that day ever comes that we see a rebooted Playmobil movie, will they learn from their mistakes to make something more than a LEGO movie ripoff? You know, to be honest, I don't really care. I've always been more of a LEGO guy anyways. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the story of the Playmobil movie, then hit that like button and come subscribe to my channel. I want to give a special shout out to Sarah for helping me out with the video and give that toy collector's perspective to provide an extra layer to this story.
Don't forget to also follow her channel, Just Too Good, if you're ever looking for some Legos in your watch list. I'll be looking for more crazy history in the world of animation. So until next time, see you later, dudes.
Look, I'm glad to see a happy ending, but you gotta go.